Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that everything you believed about yourself was a beautiful illusion. Think about it. What if the voice inside your head, the identity you defend, the story you call you, is not truly who you are? What if behind this fragile mask of human experience there hides an infinite being, observing, dreaming, and pretending to be this temporary self? In this video, we will explore one of the most profound truths ever revealed, the secret that has echoed through the ages, whispered by sages, mystics, and enlightened masters, that you are not merely human. You are the divine itself playing a cosmic game of forgetfulness, and by the end of this journey, you will see why the last revelation, the one at the end, is the most powerful and life-changing of all. Before we dive deep, take a moment to subscribe to the channel, leave your like and share this video with those who seek meaning beyond the ordinary. Because today, we're not just talking about philosophy, we're uncovering the mystery of existence itself. Stay until the end, because what you're about to hear might forever change how you perceive life, reality, and your own identity. For thousands of years, humanity has sought to understand who we are and why we exist. Religion told us we are children of God. Science tells us we are matter, stardust organized by chance. But the ancient mystics, from Egypt to India, from the teachings of Hermes Trismegistus to the wisdom of the Upanishads, revealed something even deeper, that God did not create you as something separate from himself. God became you. This idea is at the heart of all esoteric wisdom. The Emerald Tablet of Thoth says, "As above, so below, as within, so without." This means that the divine pattern of creation exists inside every human being. The same consciousness that spins galaxies into motion is the same consciousness that animates your thoughts, your heartbeat, your dreams. You are not a drop separated from the ocean. You are the entire ocean, experiencing itself as a drop. But somewhere in the infinite cycle of existence, the divine decided to experience limitation, to forget its boundless nature, and step into form. The ancient Hindus called this cosmic game Leela, the divine play. In this sacred drama, God chooses to forget who he is, to feel, to love, to fear, to struggle, only to one day remember again. You are not a lost soul trying to reach God. You are God, pretending to be lost, so you could experience the joy of finding yourself again. Pause for a moment and ask yourself, who is it that is aware of your thoughts right now? When you feel sadness, who is the one observing the sadness? When you dream, who is the dreamer? Behind every layer of identity, your name, your body, your memories, there is an awareness that never changes. That silent witness is your true self. Modern science, in its own way, is beginning to approach this ancient truth. Quantum physics has shown that the observer affects the observed. Consciousness, not matter, seems to be the foundation of reality. The double-slit experiment, as discussed by physicists like John Wheeler, suggests that reality responds to awareness itself. The universe is not a cold machine. It is a living field of consciousness expressing itself through infinite forms. And this field is you. This is the secret that the mystics guarded for millennia. That divinity is not found in distant heavens or temples of stone, but in the stillness of your own awareness. Jesus hinted at this when he said, "Ye are gods." The Buddha discovered it under the Bodhi tree when he awakened and saw that all beings share the same luminous nature. The Hermetic masters knew it when they taught that all is mind. But if this truth is so powerful and universal, why don't we live as gods? Why do we suffer, fear, and feel so small? The answer lies in one of the greatest paradoxes of creation. To experience being human, consciousness must forget its divinity. To play the game of life, the infinite must pretend to be finite, and so you, the divine consciousness, entered this world of time and matter, wrapped in layers of illusion, body, ego, memory, culture, until you began to believe the dream was real. And yet, every longing for meaning, every spark of inspiration, every act of compassion is the divine remembering itself. Each time you feel awe before a sunset, or love so deep it brings tears to your eyes, that is God peeking through the disguise, reminding himself, I am here, I am everything, I am all. I am. So the question becomes, what would happen if you stopped pretending? What if you began to remember who you truly are? How would your life change if you saw yourself, not as a mere person struggling to survive, but as the infinite consciousness expressing itself through human form. As we continue, we will journey deeper into the process of awakening, into the mystery of how the universe dreamed itself into existence, and why you chose to forget your true nature in the first place. Because understanding this is not just philosophy, it is the beginning of liberation itself. Every great spiritual tradition has tried, in its own way, to explain this act of divine forgetting, the moment when the infinite became finite, when the one fractured into the illusion of many. The Gnostics described it as the fall of Sophia, divine wisdom descending into matter and losing remembrance of her celestial origin. The Hermetic texts speak of the descent of the soul, the immortal spark that leaves the realm of pure light and enters the density of form, wrapped in layers of shadow and illusion. But this fall was never a mistake. It was a choice, a sacred act of self-discovery. The universe is not a punishment, and life is not a prison. This world is a mirror through which the divine learns to see itself. You are not trapped here by accident. You are here because, before time began, you desired to experience what infinity could never know in its pure form: limitation, emotion, imperfection, and growth. Think about it. How could an all-knowing infinite consciousness ever know what it means to overcome fear unless it first felt fear? How could it know courage without danger, compassion without suffering, joy without contrast? Every challenge in your life, every shadow that crosses your path is not an obstacle but an invitation, a divine opportunity to rediscover your own light. The great psychologist Carl Jung hinted at this cosmic truth when he wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." What Jung understood, and what ancient mystics knew long before him, is that awakening is not about escaping humanity, but about remembering your divinity through humanity. The human experience is not separate from God. It is God, learning through experience what it already knows in eternity. You are the infinite exploring the infinite, in disguise as a person called you. Pause and feel that truth. Beneath every thought, every breath, every heartbeat, something eternal observes. That silent awareness has never been born, and it will never die. You have watched lifetimes come and go like waves on the ocean, yet the ocean itself remains still. You are that ocean, timeless, boundless, unchanging. In the words of the Indian sage Ramana Maharshi, the self is God. The self itself is God. He taught that enlightenment is not about attaining something new, but simply recognizing what has always been there, the pure consciousness behind all appearances. The illusion of separateness, he said, is like mist obscuring the sun. When the mist dissolves, the sun was never gone. Science again begins to echo this insight. Physicist David Bohm, a close collaborator of Albert Einstein, spoke of the implicate order, a hidden unity underlying all things. According to Bohm, what we perceive as separate objects and events are actually unfoldings of one infinite whole, constantly interacting with itself. You, me, the stars, the galaxies, all are expressions of a single consciousness exploring its own depths. So when you look into the eyes of another person, you are looking into another expression of yourself. When you show kindness to someone in pain, you are soothing another face of the divine. When you love, you are God loving God. And when you suffer, you are God remembering what compassion feels like. This is the paradox of creation. The infinite needed to become limited to experience itself. The light had to enter darkness to recognize its brilliance. The divine had to become human to understand love, loss, and longing. But here's where the game becomes extraordinary, and where your awakening begins. The moment you start to see through the illusion, life begins to change in subtle but profound ways. The world no longer feels random or meaningless. Coincidences start to appear, guiding you toward awareness. The people you meet, the experiences you attract, all begin to serve a higher purpose, to help you remember. Have you ever felt that some events in your life were too perfectly timed to be accidents? That a certain person arrived at the exact moment you needed them? That pain somehow led to transformation? These are not coincidences. These are the echoes of your own higher self, orchestrating the dream to awaken you from within. The great Sufi poet Rumi wrote, "You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop." These words are not a metaphor. They are literal truth. Every cell in your body carries the intelligence of the cosmos. Every heartbeat vibrates in rhythm with the stars. When you breathe, the same air that once filled the lungs of the ancients moves through you. You are connected to everything that ever was and ever will be. So why does remembering this truth feel so difficult? Because the illusion of separateness is incredibly convincing. From birth, we are taught that we are bodies, minds, nationalities, genders, that we are defined by our limitations. The world reinforces the illusion through language, culture, and fear. We forget, not because we are weak, but because the game is designed that way. But when you begin to awaken, when you start questioning who you really are, the illusion begins to tremble. The walls of separation crack, and light begins to seep through. You may feel moments of clarity, waves of peace, or an indescribable sense of unity with all things. These are glimpses of your true nature, shining through the mask of the human self. And once you have tasted that, nothing in this world can fully satisfy you again, because your soul begins to remember. As we move forward, we will go deeper into this sacred remembrance, exploring how the divine projected itself into matter, how the illusion of I was created, and how you can dissolve the veil to awaken to your original state of consciousness. Because the final revelation, the one awaiting you at the end of this journey, is far greater than you can imagine. To understand how the divine became the human, we must explore the ancient architecture of creation itself, the process by which infinite consciousness descended into form. The Hermetic teachings describe it as the one becoming the many. The Kabbalists call it the emanation of the Sephiroth, 10 luminous spheres through which the infinite light, or Ein Sof, steps down into the density of matter. In both traditions, the message is the same. Creation is not the work of an external god sculpting clay, but of consciousness condensing into vibration, light, energy, and finally, matter. The Emerald Tablet of Hermes Trismegistus declared, "That which is below is like that which is above, to accomplish the miracles of the one thing." The ancients knew that every layer of existence is a mirror of the higher. The stars above mirror the atoms within you. Your thoughts shape the field of reality, just as the cosmos shapes the destiny of galaxies. The entire universe is holographic, a single consciousness exploring itself through countless reflections. Imagine for a moment the divine as an infinite ocean of awareness. To experience itself, it creates ripples, waves that rise and fall. Each wave is an individual consciousness, appearing separate but never leaving the ocean. That is you. That is me. The illusion of individuality is not a mistake, but the method by which the infinite perceives its own infinity. Mystics and physicists alike have sensed this truth. The French philosopher and Jesuit priest Pierre Teilhard de Chardin wrote, "We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience." He saw evolution itself as the unfolding of divine consciousness, moving through matter, life, mind, and eventually, through us, awakening to its own divinity. Modern physics now hints at the same idea. Quantum entanglement shows that two particles separated by vast distances remain mysteriously connected, as if space and time are mere illusions. When one is observed, the other instantly responds. Consciousness, it seems, transcends the limits of the physical world. What the mystics intuited through meditation, science is now beginning to glimpse through mathematics. But if everything is divine consciousness in disguise, why does life still feel so painful, so divided, so incomplete? Because the illusion of separation is not merely intellectual, it is emotional, biological, and psychological. When the infinite consciousness entered this human form, it clothed itself in the veil of memory, identity, and fear. It began to believe in the story of me. Think about it. From childhood, we are taught who we are, our name, our gender, our nationality, our religion. We inherit beliefs and fears that were never truly ours. Layer upon layer, the mind constructs a false self, a mask called the ego, and behind that mask, the real self sleeps, dreaming the dream of being human. The Buddha called this illusion Maya. The Upanishads described it as the veil that hides the self from itself, but they also taught that awakening is inevitable. No matter how deeply the divine forgets, it cannot remain lost forever. The spark within you, the silent witness behind your thoughts, always remembers. It whispers through intuition, through synchronicity, through the sudden awareness that there must be more to life than this. And there is. When you begin to turn inward, to question, to observe, to be still, something extraordinary happens. The identification with the small self starts to weaken. You realize that your thoughts come and go, but you remain. Your emotions rise and fall, yet something eternal witnesses them. That witness is your true nature, pure consciousness, untouched by the storms of the mind. This is why the great teachers always emphasize self-knowledge as the path to liberation. The Oracle of Delphi in ancient Greece bore the inscription, "Know thyself, and thou shalt know the universe and the gods." To know yourself is not to analyze your personality or your history, but to awaken to the awareness behind them. When you know who you truly are, the illusion of separation dissolves, and the divine remembers itself as you. Have you ever had a moment when time seemed to stop? When you felt completely present, aware, and connected to everything around you? Maybe while watching the ocean, gazing at the stars, or holding someone you love. In those moments, the veil lifts. The boundaries between self and world blur. What remains is pure being, the divine essence shining through the human form. This state is not a mystical fantasy. It is your natural state. You do not need to become enlightened. You only need to remember. Enlightenment is not an achievement. It is the simplest recognition of what has always been true. But remembering comes with responsibility. Once you realize you are the creator, you can no longer live unconsciously. Your thoughts, your emotions, your choices, they all ripple through the field of existence. You become aware that your inner world shapes the outer world. The Hermetic masters called this the principle of mentalism. All is mind. The universe is mental, and every thought is a vibration that influences the whole. So the question arises, if you are God pretending to be you, then what are you creating with your thoughts right now? What kind of world are you projecting into the field of infinite potential? Are you dreaming a world of fear and division, or one of love and unity? This is the beginning of divine responsibility, to live consciously, to recognize that every action, every word, every intention echoes through eternity. As we approach the final part of this journey, we will explore the ultimate realization, the awakening beyond awakening, when the divine stops pretending altogether and fully remembers itself through you. That final revelation is not only the most powerful but also the most liberating truth a human being can experience. Everything in your life has been leading to this moment. Every joy, every sorrow, every victory, every heartbreak. Because behind every experience, one purpose has been unfolding: for God to awaken from the dream of being you. The awakening is not a distant event that happens after death, nor is it reserved for saints and mystics. It happens here, now, in this very breath, when you realize that the one who has been searching for God has always been God itself, looking through your eyes. The great Hindu text, the Chandogya Upanishad, proclaims, "Tat Tvam Asi," thou art that. Those three simple words hold the entire mystery of existence. They mean that the same essence that gives life to the stars gives life to you. You and the infinite are not two. You are the same being seen from different points of view. But how can the finite mind grasp the infinite? It cannot. The mind is part of the illusion, a tool within the dream. The truth of your being cannot be understood intellectually. It must be remembered, felt, realized. And realization begins the moment you stop trying to find God outside of yourself. When you sit in silence and observe your thoughts, your feelings, your breath, you start to notice that everything arises within awareness, and that awareness is not personal. It has no boundaries, no age, no face, no beginning, and no end. That awareness is what you truly are. It is the same awareness that has been watching through the eyes of every living being since the dawn of time. This is why the mystics spoke of oneness, not as a poetic idea, but as literal truth. There is only one consciousness, dreaming itself as billions of beings. When one awakens, the whole awakens a little more. Every act of love, every moment of forgiveness, every spark of understanding contributes to the collective remembrance of the One. Jesus revealed this mystery when he said, "I and the Father are one." The Buddha expressed the same truth when he declared, "When I look deeply, I see that I am not separate from anything." And Hermes Trismegistus, echoing across the ages, taught, "The all is one, and the one is all." These are not metaphors. They are descriptions of a reality beyond illusion. The separation between God and humanity is an illusion sustained by forgetfulness. When the divine looks at itself through human eyes and says, "I am me," it begins the dream. But when it looks again and says, "I am everything," the dream ends. That is enlightenment, the end of the game of pretending. But awakening is not an escape from the world. It is a return to it with new eyes. Once you realize that you are the divine playing the role of a human, every aspect of existence becomes sacred. The mundane turns miraculous. Washing your hands, speaking to a stranger, feeling the wind on your skin, all of it becomes an act of worship because it is all God in motion, exploring itself. This is the true meaning of spirituality, not to run from the human experience, but to live it fully, knowing what it really is, a divine performance of infinite consciousness. You do not transcend the world by rejecting it. You transcend it by loving it, by seeing through it, by recognizing that there is no other. There is only the one, forever meeting itself. And when you live from this awareness, fear begins to dissolve. How can you fear death if what you truly are has never been born? How can you feel alone when every being you meet is another expression of your own infinite self? How can you despair when even the darkest night is simply the divine hiding from itself, waiting to be rediscovered? This is the liberation the mystics spoke of, the realization that life itself is eternal. The body may fade, the stories may end, but the consciousness that animates them remains untouched, infinite and free. Think of a wave returning to the ocean. Does it die? No. It merges back into what it always was. The same is true for you. You are not disappearing into some vast void. You are awakening into your true identity, the source of all creation, the silence before the first word, the light behind every star. The final revelation, the one promised since the beginning of this journey, is this: you have never been a human searching for God. You have always been God searching for yourself. All your life, every desire, every loss, every triumph has been the path home, a sacred spiral leading you back to this realization. And now that you see it, something begins to shift. The masks fall, the roles dissolve, the dream continues, but you are awake within it. You can laugh, cry, love, and live as before, but now you do it consciously, knowing that you are not the actor but the playwright, the stage, and the audience all at once. The divine no longer hides behind your face, it shines through it. So remember this, not as a philosophy but as a living truth. You are the infinite pretending to be finite. You are the eternal wearing the disguise of time. You are God, dreaming that you are human. And now, you are awakening from the dream. And when you look at the stars tonight, remember, they are not above you, they are within you. The same light that burns in their core burns in your soul. The same intelligence that shaped galaxies whispers through your thoughts. You are not a small being lost in an indifferent universe. You are the universe itself, finally remembering who it has always been. Thanks for looking.